Hi, welcome to Movie Digest. In this video I'm going to explain 2016 horror thriller movie titled The Boy. Spoilers ahead. A young American woman named Greta Evans travels to the countryside of United Kingdom after being hired as a nanny by an elderly couple. Upon arriving at the house, she immediately takes off her shoes and looks around the mansion. She calls for the owners but no one respond. So she heads upstairs and notices a giant portrait of the owners with their son. She then walks towards a room after hearing a strange noise coming from it, but couldn't find anyone inside. Greta was shocked by the sudden arrival of a man, who introduces himself as Malcolm, who delivers groceries to the house. He offers Greta a tour and ends up in the kitchen, where they both unpack the groceries and have a casual talk. Soon the owner's wife, Mrs. Hilshire, walks into the kitchen. Mrs. Hilshire asks Greta where are her shoes. Greta quickly walks to the place where she took off her shoe, and she was surprised to find they were gone. Mrs. Hilshire casually says it could be her son's doing, who is always playful. Greta then gets to meet Mr. Hilshire, and they introduce her to the boy she is supposed to babysit. But is surprised to find the boy isn't human but a doll named Brahms. She laughs thinking it's a joke. But Mr. and Mrs. Hilshire get angry. Just then Malcolm steps in and greets Brahms like a human. Witnessing that, Greta decides to play along and greets Brahms in the same manner. Mrs. Hilshire mentions many nannies had applied for the job, but Brahms rejected them all because they weren't as young and pretty as Greta. Mrs. Hilshire teaches Greta on taking care of Brahms, and gives her strict instructions to read poetry for Brahms in a loud and clear voice, and playing loud music for him. Later, Mr. Hilshire tells her they store the leftovers in the fridge, and instructs on setting a mousetrap since Mrs. Hilshire is worried that rats could enter the walls. Mr. Hilshire tells Greta it may look foolish for her, but he believes that their son is with them. That night she finds the couple talking to Brahms, and she felt strange when Mr. Hilshire closes the door for privacy. A moment later, they come out and tell Greta that Brahms likes her and he wants her to babysit him. Greta calls her sister and tells her about the experience at the house. Her sister thinks the situation is perfect for her, and reveals Greta's abusive ex-boyfriend has been calling her, asking for her whereabouts. Her sister assures she didn't tell him anything and suggests staying there for a few months until she can start over. The next morning, Greta hears that Mr. Hilshire was angry as Brahms made his room a mess. Later Mr. Hilshire tells Greta that they are going on a vacation, and gives her some schedules and rules she had to follow for the next few days. Before leaving, he tells that Malcolm arrives once in a week with groceries and he would help her with anything. After the couple has left, Greta begins to ignore the rules, leaving Brahms alone. Later that night she wakes up hearing some strange noises. Greta looks around the house to find where the noise is coming from. While looking at the family's portrait, suddenly a hand comes right out of the wall to choke her. But it turns out to be a nightmare. She hears a baby crying, and checks into Brahms' room to find tears rolling in his eyes, but she soon learns that the ceiling is leaking. That night Greta gets a call, but no one speaks on the other side. Next morning, Malcolm comes to deliver groceries and hands her first week's paycheck. When Greta asks him about Brahms, Malcolm tells her that Brahms was once a real boy and was the only child of Mr. and Mrs. Hilshire. But 20 years ago on his 8th birthday, their house caught fire and after not being able to escape on time, Brahms died. Malcolm thinks the doll is simply a coping mechanism to deal with their loss. Malcolm then asks her out for a date that night, and Greta agrees. While getting ready, she talks to her sister about the date. Greta finds that Brahms is watching her, and she closes the door. Greta goes for a shower, but she was surprised to find her hair has been cut, and her dress and necklace are missing. She then rushes to look for it, to find a ladder to the attic and hear strange noises. She climbs up to the attic, and suddenly the ladder closes by itself, and gets trapped inside. Malcolm arrives to pick Greta, and Greta shouts for help, but Malcolm doesn't hear her, and after waiting for some time he leaves. While Greta tries to find another way out, a gigantic figure appears in front of her, where she gets shocked and faints. In the morning, Greta wakes up and realizes the scary figure was just a coat. She finds many pictures of real Brahms. Suddenly the ladder opens, and she was mysteriously let out. Greta gets to her room to find all her things were ransacked. She explains to Malcolm about the incident, and they learn that the ladder can close and open on its own. Greta suspects the doll behind all of it, but Malcolm thinks it's absurd. Greta asks him again about Brahms, and he reveals there are two types of talk in town about Brahms. Some people think he is a good kid and feels sorry as the tragedy took him at a young age, while some others think he is a strange kid. Malcolm also reveals that once Mr. Hilshire described Brahms as odd. Later that night, Greta calls her sister again. Her sister tells her that her abusive ex-boyfriend named Cole has got her address. Greta is worried as Cole is violent and she suffered a miscarriage after being beaten by Cole. One night Greta finds someone's presence in the house. She heads to Brahms' room and finds it messy. Suddenly his head shakes up and it turns out to be another nightmare. Greta then finds her shoes outside the door, which she lost on the day of arrival. She goes to Brahms' room to find him in a different position, and finds the list of rules beside him as if he is asking her to obey them. Greta was shocked and runs back to her room to lock herself. Suddenly the phone rings. To her horror, a child's voice tells Greta to follow the rules. Then a shadow appears under the door and she hears a humming sound. A bit later Brahms promises that he will be good, and Greta believes that Brahms' spirit is in that doll. She opens the door to find a tray of food filled with sandwiches that Brahms has given her. At that point Greta has mixed emotions, but she was sure that Brahms doesn't want to hurt her, he just wants her attention. In the next scene, we see Mr. and Mrs. Hilshire writing a letter to Brahms stating they cannot bear to live with him, because of what he has become, and mentions that they left Greta for him. Later, Mr. and Mrs. Hilshire stuff their coats with rocks and commit suicide by drowning themselves. Greta now starts to take care of Brahms, and abiding every rule and schedules given by Mr. and Mrs. Hilshire. The following day, Malcolm comes with a letter from Mrs. Hilshire and Mr. Hilshire. He also asks Greta out for a date that evening. However, Greta refuses his invitation to look after Brahms. Malcolm gets disappointed, and leaves. Greta then tries to talk to Brahms and asks him to give her a sign that he exists. Soon she learns that Brahms can move places by himself. The following day, Greta calls Malcolm to the house, to show that Brahms is actually alive. At first, she fails to prove it because he only moves when no one is watching. So they both leave the room. They hear a creaking sound and Brahms giggling. They enter the room to find he has moved, and eventually Malcolm believes her. That night, Malcolm stays with Greta. While the two are spending their time together, they were interrupted by Brahms, who is possibly jealous. Then the two of them have a conversation in the kitchen. Malcolm realizes that Greta is getting attached to him. He reveals a horrible truth surrounding Brahms' death. When Brahms was a child, a girl named Emily Cribbs used to come to the house once a week to play with Brahms. On his 8th birthday, Emily went to play with Brahms in the Hilshire mansion and never returned. Later they discovered her body in the woods with her skull crushed. When the cops arrived at the mansion to question Brahms, the place was already up in flames and Brahms was later found dead. Malcolm believes that Brahms' spirit inside the doll could be possibly evil. That night Greta goes to the attic and finds Emily's pictures with Brahms from his 8th birthday. Next morning, Greta's abusive ex-boyfriend, Cole, shows up at the mansion, intending to force Greta back home. For Greta's safety, Malcolm stays outside in his car. At night, Greta asks the doll for help. Cole wakes up and sees a message written in blood telling him to leave. Believing it was done by Greta, he becomes furious. Greta realizes it's Brahms doing using rat blood. She tries explaining it to him, but he refuses to believe her. Hearing their argument, Malcolm rushes into the house, and he too tries to convince Cole that there's a lot more than a doll. Cole gets angry, and he smashes the doll to pieces. Suddenly, the lights in the house start to flicker, and they hear noises behind the walls. Cole tries to figure out where the noise was coming from. Then, suddenly, the mirror explodes and Cole falls behind. From a hole behind it emerges the real, now adult Brahms wearing a porcelain mask identical to the doll's face, after surviving the fire accident. Greta and Malcolm soon realize it's real Brahms. He immediately attacks Cole and kills him. Later, he tries to attack Malcolm and Greta. While trying to escape from him, they discover Brahms' room. They soon realize he has been living in the house and watching her the whole time. Greta was shocked to find her missing dress on a doll. Greta also finds the goodbye letter from the Hilshires, revealing their plan of leaving Greta behind as a mate for Brahms. Soon they got caught by Brahms, and he knocks out Malcolm. He threatens Greta that he will kill him if she leaves. Greta is able to escape the house, but soon returns to save Malcolm. Arming herself with a screwdriver, she invokes the rules and forces Brahms to bed. Before leaving, he asks for a goodnight kiss. When he tries to kiss her, she stabs him. Brahms tries to choke her, but she pushes the weapon in deeper and he collapses. Greta rushes to find Malcolm, and they escape the house. Later we see someone is putting back pieces of the doll together, suggesting that Brahms is still alive. We can deduce that Brahms never died in the first place, and his parents burned their own house to save him from the world. All the time the doll was never actually moving on its own but was being moved by the real Brahms who lives in the walls. They set the mousetrap to stop them from entering the walls, and Mrs. Hilshire insists on playing music loud enough for Brahms to hear through the wall. They always save the leftovers in the fridge, so that all the food could be available to Brahms. Make sure to subscribe, and turn on notifications to watch more videos like this.